we're like, okay, I need to get this lens for this and I need to focus on this. And then at the same time that we're getting shots here, there's a tender moment shared between the mother and the bride. It's just a lot. It's a lot. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Alicia Renice, and I am the experimental photographer. This channel is basically a place for me to have fun, for photographers to have fun, to feel free enough to experiment with things that they maybe wanted to try, but felt like, caged in based on their profession, or maybe they're just starting out and trying to figure out what they like. And so I'm here to offer my expertise, what, expertise I have, and to encourage you to really just get out there and have fun with photography. So today, as the title suggests, I'm going to talk about why I quit being a wedding photographer. So if you look on YouTube, they're not lacking in videos about wedding photography at all. There are tutorials, there are, how to make, $100,000 doing wedding photography. And that's all great and grand, for those who love it. I started doing wedding photography. The first wedding gig that I had was for one of my friends who had a house wedding. So it was small, it was intimate, it was beautiful. And I loved the experience. And from that experience, I thought, oh, I would love wedding photography. Like I should keep doing this. It was beautiful. It was just awesome. And then 3 gigs later, I was like, this probably isn't for me anymore. And so I also understand that wedding photography is not all bad. There are some great experiences I had while I was a wedding photographer. There are some great experiences I had preparing for the wedding, the actual ceremony, the taking the pictures, the culling and the editing of everything, and the delivering the pictures and seeing my client's face or seeing them post the pictures. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. But ultimately for me, and this is just personally, the pros did not outweigh the cons. And so I'm actually going to give you some pros and I'll say considerations, because I don't want to say that they are, cons necessarily, because you might like it. But for me, I just did not. So let's start with the positive, okay? First thing, it's an absolutely beautiful experience. Seeing the bride marry the groom, seeing the father walking the daughter down the aisle, the mother giving a teary speech, mother-son dance, the father-daughter dance. Everything, just seeing a wedding is beautiful. I'm a romantic, so I love seeing love. I love seeing love. I love seeing love flourish. I love seeing people being happy and joyful. That's just one of my favorite things. And I love being able to capture moments like that as well. So, that's something wonderful. If you like romance, then go for it. I think that's really beautiful. Another wonderful thing, about wedding photography is there's always money to be made. There's always money to be made. People take out loans for weddings. Not that I say that you should, but they do. Meaning that there is money out there for weddings. People will pay for quality products. Like if your photography is amazing, then go for it, right? But for some people, the money is not worth it. And for me, it just wasn't. I don't know if it was just like the circuit I was working in, but I just felt very undervalued. And not necessarily by my clients, but by potential clients, when I really counted the cost of how much work actually goes into wedding photography, like you'll adjust the prices because it's a lot of work. Yeah, there's money to be made. People take out loans. You have platforms that help you, like the Wedding Wire, things like that. Services like that will help you get clients for their wedding. Another pro is that based on how well you do at their wedding, people might book you as their photographer for life. So I have gotten clients from portrait photography who have allowed me to come back and take pictures of their family at their christening, at their dedications, at their business. Based on how well you do at the wedding, you potentially could have a client for life, for every big life event. So if they're at the wedding, they're probably going to have a baby. So then you might be able to take maternity shots, and then you could take the newborn baby shots. Then they keep having babies and you'll have family shots, family portraits every year. This is good for money coming in consistently. If you keep building your client base, then you keep building your money. And so therefore you can pay your bills. So that's an awesome perk of being a wedding photographer. Another pro to wedding photography is the practice. With wedding photography, you're not just taking portraits. You're not just taking, the portraits of the bride and the groom, whatever. You're taking basically action shots. You're taking product shots. Whether you're shooting the cake, you're taking food shots. You're getting practice for basically every kind of photography there is within a wedding, because it is an event, because it is something that you can pose your clients with and things like that. You're kind of like on the outside looking in. And so therefore you can get practice for event photography or for ceremonial photography, whether that be, again, like a christening or like a dedication service or something like that. You get practice for every kind of photo, anything at a wedding. So it's really good for you to brush up on your skills if you're really thinking about becoming a wedding photographer, because it's going to require you to be all of that and more. Another perk of working at a wedding is the connections you can build. I have built connections with other videographers, with DJs, with other photographers, with musicians and singers and pianists and things like this just by simply being at the wedding. You know, there's like a time where you're kind of not on. Like usually when people are eating, they don't really want pictures taken of them. So like you'll have maybe an hour to an hour and a half of like eating. And so in that time, I would be sitting next to the DJ booth. And I met people from out of state, from New York, from Philly, from all over the country just by hanging out in the DJ booth. And you can build your base, your reach by talking to these other people. You might not think like, oh, they have nothing to offer me, but sometimes it's not about that. Honestly, I like talking to people in general, like, hey, how you doing? Like, you know, I like the music you're mixing, da da da. We exchange cards. And so voila, he might have an event come up and like a couple might ask him, hey, do you know any photographers? Like, you know what? I got somebody in mind, somebody that I met last week at another wedding. This could build your network. It could build your following. It could build your client base just by simply being a kind person to the other vendors at the wedding. So it's a great opportunity to network, great opportunity to make, you know, again, connections with other vendors. Now let's move on to the considerations. These are things that kind of bugged me about wedding photography and things that just it just made it not worth it, you know, for me personally. So let's jump into number one. Weddings can be grueling to your body. Like for 10 plus hours, you're standing there tense, you're holding a camera, you're really exercising and engaging muscles that you're not used to engaging for 10 hours straight. There have been times where I left weddings and my whole body was just like one drenched in sweat or I sat in the car and I was like, this is the first time I've relaxed all day, right? And then what happens the day after? I'm sore, I'm exhausted, I'm drained. You know, I feel like trash. I feel like I've been hit by a truck. For me, it was like, I don't want to do this every single weekend where I feel like this. You know what I mean? It wasn't even healthy. It's not like, you know, when you exercise, and like the next day you might be sore, like, oh, I put in that work. No, it's like, you know, your back hurts, just everything. And again, there are things that you can purchase and buy to help, you know, distribute the weight evenly on your body. If you're wearing a camera around your neck, they have like vests, so that's more, so it's distributed evenly, the weight. However, for me, just being on my feet all that time, squatting for long times, for 2 hours, 3 hours, that's not that bad. But for 10 plus, it's a lot. You can only take so many clients a year. That's number two. Working in the wedding industry, you'll soon learn that it's not a simple click. Oh, I'm gonna send you all the photos from your wedding by Monday. No, that's not how this works. You have to have the consultation meetings beforehand, the planning, talk to the wedding planner, all these other things. You have to do all this work beforehand. So that's taking time away from your other clients. You have to actually shoot the wedding. Again, that might be like a day. Then after that, for me, sometimes it takes me more than 2 weeks to edit photos from a wedding. More than 2 weeks, because I want to give them quality edits. I want to be able to give them like beautiful things that they want to remember forever. And if you build them a photo book as well with that, that's going to take time to curate and to put together as well. So understanding how much time it really takes away from the year, there's only 52 weeks in a year. There's only 52 weeks. So if you have a wedding, let's say every other week, you're going to be stretched thin, you're going to be stressed out. Unless you have like a team or like a process that's amazing, you're not going to have quality images for your client. So you can only take so many clients that year, which means that you have to have an idea of how much you need to survive for the year and then mark up your prices to match what you need for the year, you know? And so also bumping your prices up means sometimes that you'll have less clients. You know, but it's a good give and take, because if you have less clients that are quality and that pay you more, that's less work you have to do. Sometimes you might need a second shooter. You know, there's not everything. You can't do everything by yourself. That's just not happening. If the wedding is 1,000 plus people, there's no way that you by yourself can take all the quality shots from all the different angles, unless you have like different cameras set up all around and just clicking buttons. But even then, like, you're still missing stuff. So for the bigger weddings, you might need a second shooter. And you having a second shooter means that you have to share the money, which means that you're not getting everything that you could get from this client or this gig. Also, for me, like, I set a limit for myself. I don't do weddings over 200 people. I don't, because I don't have a second shooter. My second shooter is my husband, and he's not really a photographer, right? Like, he takes like the wide angle shots for me, but I get the detailed shots. And so I know that that's more than I can handle, and that's more than I can afford, honestly. So I would shoot everything by myself because I don't have the budget to share with a second shooter. But if you really want quality shots, you have to share your budget with a second shooter. And again, if they're a great photographer, if you have a great budget, then that's not necessarily going to be a problem. But for me, it was a problem. I should also mention that you have to be able to trust that second photographer a lot. Reaching out, building your network, following people whose work you love and whose work you admire. you have to share like even your, I guess, your pride, being able to be like, okay, well, I'm not the one necessarily running the whole show, but I trust this person enough and I'm not prideful enough that it's not going to hurt me to give them some shine too. And like I mentioned before in the pros, which is like you get practice for every kind of photography, this is also a con for me. Like you have to be every kind of photographer. A wedding photographer literally is like just an umbrella, and underneath that you have portrait, you have event, you have food, you have, boudoir in some senses, you have products photography. Like it's a lot, and switching back and forth for me was a lot. It was just a lot going back and forth like, okay, let me get the right lens that I have because I only have so many cameras, unless I rent them. We're like, okay, I need to get this lens for this and I need to focus on this. And then at the same time that we're getting shots here, there's a tender moment shared between the mother and the bride. It's just a lot. It's a lot. And so again, some people can handle it and they're amazing at it. And for me, it just wasn't worth it. And so you have to consider if that's worth it for you. If you have the skills in your repertoire to be able to be like, okay, I could be a great food photographer and I could be a great portrait photographer at the same time, get your practice in before you get there. You're going to need it. This is one of my least favorite parts of being a wedding photographer, dealing with the guests. So it's not even the clients, right? Usually the clients, they're just nervous. They just want to have a great wedding. It's just the best day of their lives. They're stressed out. They're crying. Like I can deal with that. You know what I'm saying? I can encourage them. I can tell them you look amazing. This is going to be the greatest day of your life. Enjoy it. Cherish it. It's going to be short. Like it's going to go by like this. That's fine. The problematic people are the guests. They are the ones when I'm taking pictures down the aisle, they're holding out their phones in there. So now I got a shot of your phone in it when I have the perfect shot of the bride and groom. Like these are things that are so frustrating. Or at one wedding, I was taking pictures of my clients, of the bride and groom and their family. And so then their family member had their own like Canon. And so they were like, oh, let me take this picture first and you can take it. And I'm like, I'm the one getting paid here. You're the guest. You're just supposed to be here enjoying the moment. Another example of this is I was at one of my friends' wedding. I wasn't the photographer. I was in the wedding. And so it was great for me. But at the same time, because I'm a photographer, I noticed the nuisances that happen during a wedding. So the photographer is getting around. And so then one of the family members, while they're having their first dance, is standing there with their camera recording, their iPad recording. And I'm just like, yo, like, you are in the way. Like, I understand you love these people. I understand that you want to be there for them, but you're making the photographer and the videographer's job so hard. So dealing with those guests and things like that, or like you'll have someone come up to you and ask you, hey, can you get a picture of me and my wife? And I'm like, yo, I'm here for the bride and groom. Like, I can get pictures of y'all later when it's time to dance, but right now they're actually dancing. Like, can you focus on the actual ceremony happening? It's a lot going on. You have to be able to be like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Or no, I'm not paid to do that. Or, or be patient enough to be like, okay, I'm gonna let them get this little picture in. And then we got to go because you're on a time schedule. You only have an hour to take portraits sometimes. And so guests that are stepping in and taking their own photos are taking time away from you and your craft and the photos that you could be taking. So that is one of my least favorite parts of working a wedding. Another thing to consider about weddings, lighting. So you never know what kind of situation you're walking into. I had a client, the last wedding I did, everything was uplit in purple. Everything was uplit in purple. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, one, okay. It was frustrating because I'm just like, I have to compensate for this purple that's everywhere, for the light that's oddly lit from the ground and things like that. And then it's just like the ambient light in the background and how it falls on people's faces. Because even after I take the photos, I have to edit it, and I have to edit it for the lighting that was used in the wedding. And so you have to prepare yourself as a photographer to be ready for any lighting situation. It might be low lit. For my husband's sister, their electricity went off. So can you imagine, like, as a photographer, you have, like, you're depending on the light and then it's just gone. So like that means you bring your own strobes, you bring your, like you be creative with your thoughts. Like maybe instead of using lights, you use the light from the window to light your subject, things like that. You have to be prepared for every lighting situation. And I guess the bigger issue with that is that you have no control. There's no control. You have to be ready for anything. There's no control. Like you can plan and prep all you want to. Anything that could go wrong during the day of a wedding does often. For the bride and groom, let alone for the photographer. And they don't want to hear like, oh, well, I can't take your pictures because there's no light. No, like you have to figure it out. You have to figure out what works, how to work it, and how to make it pop, how to make it amazing, because this is the most important day of their lives. Well, for right now. And for my last consideration right now, you have to make sure that the money is worth it for you. For me, making $2,000 for something that I'm doing for 2 weeks just was not worth it. I was struggling. I was hungry. I couldn't pay my bills, but I was still editing these wedding photos. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just was not matching to the work I was putting in. Like, I was killing myself for pennies, essentially. And, that was my fault for marketing myself so low and also thinking I wasn't qualified enough to be charging the prices that people often charge for weddings, or people making me feel like I wasn't worth it. And in all actuality, no. Like, we talk about like all the different photographers you need to be, but you're also like an encourager. You're also a psychiatrist on that day. You're also mediating dramas that are going on between parents and kids and siblings. You're playing a lot of roles on that day. And there's no wonder why after a wedding you feel so exhausted and so depleted. And so if the money feels like it's not worth it for you, you're not going to want to do it. It's going to feel laborious. It's going to feel like a chore. And for me, I had so much more joy just taking portraits of people, lifestyle portraits, just in a more relaxed setting, really capturing the mood of the person. I think it's great storytelling for a wedding to be able to capture from the start and to the end. But ultimately for me, I think for just the high stress situation and me running back and forth and sweating out my clothes and for, $2,000, that sounds like a lot, but it's not. It just wasn't worth it. It was not worth it. It wasn't worth it. And also the money wasn't consistent. And I was missing out on other gigs because I was still editing wedding photos. Like, when I'm in wedding season, wedding mode, all of my focus and attention goes to the client to make sure they're satisfied and happy. And so that means, again, forfeiting other opportunities. So for me, honestly, the money was not worth it. If you can make a system where you can make at least maybe $50,000 a year, which is not hard to do. It's not hard to do. It's just a lot of work. If you're charging $2,000, maybe you just need 25 gigs. I wasn't willing to go through all of that stress and all that chaos for the dollar. So I hope this was helpful. I hope with this information, you can use it to make your own educated decisions based on my experience. Again, some things you just might have to try out for yourself. Like, if I were to do weddings again, I would just do like elopements. I love small stuff. I love intimate things. I don't like big parties of people and lighting and like all this extra stuff. For me, it's just not for me. That's not the kind of person I am. On the other hand, like I said, I would do elopements. I would do engagement parties. I would do private ceremonies. I love stuff like that. So really, it's about you figuring out what works for you and what works for your temperament and the kind of person you are and how stressed you want to be. Do you just want to do the portrait photography, send the client the photos and be done? Or do you want to have a connection for life? You know what I'm saying? Like, these are things you have to really consider. So again, thank you so much for watching this video. If this was helpful at all, please leave a comment, please share it, please subscribe. If there's anything you want me to cover, any questions you have, please feel free to ask them. Send me something at 365beautyproject@gmail.com. And yeah, until next episode, you guys, talk to you later. Bye.